Thank you for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, where we discuss the latest news, rumors, and games of the NFL and college football. As always, I'm Jeremiah. We are episode 209 here, April 3rd, 2017. It is about 8:30 in the morning here in Northern California. And throughout the weekend, we have a couple of stories that kind of circulated throughout the NFL world. On Friday, I believe it was either this show or the fantasy football show that I talked with Anthony about quarterbacks playing in their 40s. One of them in that group was Drew Brees, and he was talking to the media last week, and he is 1 year. He has 1 year left on his contract. He isn't worried about it. He keeps insisting that he isn't worried about it. He wants to wait until the end of the season. And so he doesn't want to talk about the contract in his final year of his current deal. But remember, he is 38. He needs to understand that the Saints need to be prepared for a future without him. But Brees doesn't think that... Or I shouldn't say doesn't think, but, he's not ready to recommend that the Saints use one of their two first-round picks on a quarterback. And this is what he told the media last week. He said, quote, "I'm trying to put the contract conversation to bed just by saying we can worry about it at the end of the year. I think that's what's in the best interest of the team. It's in my best interest. It's in my best interest of everybody." And, he went on to talk about possibly the team drafting the quarterback. And he says, "Listen, when I leave here, I want this organization to be successful whenever that is. So I want them to prepare for that. They need to be thinking about that. But I don't want it to make it seem like this is my farewell tour. That's not the way I view it. I'm just trying to stress the sense of urgency here." And then he was asked whether if the team should draft a quarterback, if he were the general manager of a team with a veteran star the same age as him. And, he did say that he is going to play till 45. Well, at least he wants to, which I think is kind of unrealistic here. But, should the Saints take a quarterback in this year's draft? I think, when you have one quarterback, with a 1 year deal on your team, then, he's had so much success here on this team. He's kind of became the face of the New Orleans Saints here. But you have to think about, can you really see Drew Brees play until he's 45? It could happen. I'm not saying it won't. He can play till he's 45, but can he be productive till he's 45? And I think this is the year where the Saints have to take a quarterback. They got those two first-round picks. They got one of them in the Brandon Cooks deal. I think they should take a quarterback with that 32nd pick. And with these quarterbacks that are in this year's draft, none of them are ready to play right away. Anyway, you got, Deshaun Kaiser, who's probably going to go in the early second round, late first round. Deshaun Watson, Mitch Trubisky might go in the top 15. Patrick Mahomes is the guy that I like in this draft, but he might get pushed back to the second round. So there is some guys that will be available there for the Saints to draft. I can see the Jets taking a quarterback at number 6. I can see the Browns taking a quarterback at number 12. I can see the Texans taking a quarterback. Maybe the Chiefs. But I think this is the year where the Saints need to draft a quarterback just in case Drew Brees doesn't come back next year. And I think this is a great thing. If the Saints do draft a quarterback, which I do think they should, but I don't know if they would. I kind of think they might go defense with their draft. But let's just say if they did. And this will be a perfect situation for that young rookie quarterback to come in and learn behind Drew Brees. I would love for a guy like Mitch Trubisky to sit out his first year and learn behind Drew Brees. I would like for a guy like Deshaun Kaiser, Patrick Mahomes, two guys that look like they have really good arms, to learn behind Drew Brees. Deshaun Watson, he doesn't have the same type of style, but I think he has a lot to learn from Drew Brees. So all these quarterbacks here really have a lot to learn from Drew Brees. And I do think this can be a really good time for the Saints to think about their future because, I don't think the Saints are going to be a playoff team. I just don't think they have the talent. They're in a pretty tough division. They got the Falcons in there. I think Tampa Bay is going to be better. And then you got Carolina. I think they're going to have a bounce-back year. I don't think Carolina's going to be awful for 2 straight years in a row. But, when I look at this Saints team, I just don't think they have the pieces to contend right now. And I do think they have to start thinking about the future after Brees. And, if Drew Brees doesn't sign an extension with the Saints, he's probably not going to retire. He's going to probably enter a free agency for a second straight time in his career. And if he does, he's going to be like the Peyton Manning treatment here, where he has to go to a contending team. So I think there's a potential for a future of the Saints, drafting a quarterback this year, have that rookie quarterback sit out for a year, and then, Drew Brees might not even come back after his deal is done. I still think he might want to play. Depending on this year, I still think he can play at a high level. And he might become a free agent in 2018 and want to sign to a contending team. And let's just say that Denver, they don't get Tony Romo. They decide to stick to the young guys here. And let's just look at Houston. Let's just say they still stick with Tom Savage for some reason. They don't get Tony Romo. I think that he can be a really good fit for Houston. I think there's potential of Drew Brees leaving the Saints in free agency. And I think, that's why Saints have to start thinking about a future without Drew Brees. And I know it's tough to say because, Drew Brees kind of became like the face of that city a little bit. He's done so much for that community. He's done so much for that team. Like when that team won the Super Bowl in 2009, that city was the proudest it ever has been. Because when they won that Super Bowl, they were about, 5 years away, removed from Hurricane Katrina, one of the most devastating times that city has ever felt. That win alone really uplifted that city. And that's what's tough for me to say because Drew Brees was a huge part of that happening. But when I look at Drew Brees, he can still play at a high level. He did have games when he was kind of inconsistent. But when you look at his overall stat line, he threw for 37 touchdowns. This is ever since 2008, he's had at least 30 touchdown passes. So that's a long time. Since 2008. So that's like a 9-year streak right there. Or I should say 8. That's an 8-year streak. So, with throwing 37 touchdown passes, he did have 15 picks. He did have his fifth, season of over 5,000 yards passing. And he did have a 70% completion percentage. I still think he can play at a high level. And I know he throws the ball a lot. But that's just the style of the Saints game here. And, when I look at heading to the future here, and when I look at this year, I just don't think there's enough for the Saints to be a playoff team. And Drew Brees did say he wants to play till he's 45, but I just think that's kind of unrealistic at this point. I still don't think Tom Brady can play that high as well. And I don't know if Aaron Rodgers can play that high as well. But you never know. We can probably see it. But getting back to, the Saints' future here, I think, from his perspective, Drew Brees wants his team to draft guys that can help him now. And I really do get that. You want to have guys that can help you right now this season. But honestly, if I'm in the Saints front office and, we still have quarterbacks left in the board at 32, because they're not going to get quarterback in their first round pick. They're going to wait till the 32nd pick. Let's just say that, you got someone like Patrick Mahomes. I think Deshaun Watson can still be on the board. Deshaun Kaiser could definitely still be on the board. Let's just say if there's one of those quarterbacks there, because I don't think Mitch Trubisky is going to be on the board by the time that happens. I don't think Deshaun Watson would be on the board. I do think there's a real good chance that Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Kaiser are on the board. So let's just say if I'm in the front office, am I in the draft room, wouldn't I want to take a chance on one of those quarterbacks if they're right there? Wouldn't you have to make that decision? Because you got to think about what's going to help you. And I get it. You got to know what's going to help you now, but you got a quarterback that's 38. How long? He may not have that long to play at a high level. Wouldn't you want to take a quarterback there at that spot? You got to do it. It's just hard. It would just be hard for me to pass on the quarterback at 32 when you have a couple guys there. But we'll just say if there's not, we'll just say that if those two guys are not there, then maybe you should get someone that will help you now. But would you have any of those guys on the board left? I think you got to pull the trigger and then draft a guy. You have to. You got to. I think if the Saints do pass on the quarterback, any of those quarterbacks, if any of those quarterbacks are still on the board and they pass on them, I don't think it would be a smart move at all. I don't think it would be a smart move to pass on any of those quarterbacks if they're there at 32. I don't think so. And I know Drew Brees has still played at a high level, but he's 38 years old. He may not be there in 2018. He is going to be a free agent if they don't get a deal done. You got to start thinking about the future there. You got to take a chance on one of those young guys. And I would love to see the guy, I think one of the players I would love to see in the Saints uniform, I would like to see Trubisky there, but he's probably going to be one of the first quarterbacks taken. I would probably like to see Kaiser or Mahomes there. They do have that type of game where they can just throw it deep. They have a really great arm, but, they have to work on their mechanics a little bit. I would like to see one of those two guys there. And, it remains to be seen what the Saints do in the draft. And remember, we're about, 4 weeks away from the draft, so we got a lot to talk about this entire month. All right, well, I'm going to take my first break, and when I get back, I'm going to talk about some of the quarterbacks on the market, including Colin Kaepernick, and the fact that teams are staying away from him from his vegan diet, and how I think that is kind of absurd. I'll talk about that when I get back to Against the Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching.
Hey!
The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back to Going to Me Concepts Football Podcast. And free agency, is pretty much slow, really down since it started a month ago. And one of the big names that's still in the market is Colin Kaepernick. And honestly, I'm not surprised that the market has been cold. He did come under scrutiny last year due to his national anthem protest. And, I did think that was going to really hurt him in getting the new job. Even though I still think he can play, I really thought that was really going to shy away a lot of NFL owners, a lot of NFL GMs. And the thing that has bothered me, though, about teams not staying away from Kaepernick is that they keep continuing to make excuses to not sign him. They haven't said the protest is a reason why. There has been a legitimate source of that says teams don't want to sign because of that. But one of the reports that I've read over the weekend comes from Matt Miyoko of NBC Sports Bay Area. He reported Friday that NFL teams are quote-unquote unconvinced about Kaepernick's commitment to football and quote-unquote wonder about his vegan lifestyle. So teams are concerned about Colin Kaepernick's vegan diet, which is the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life. Because, the reason why this really bothers me is, Tom Brady has been known to be a vegan for most of the year. This is a guy that doesn't eat a strawberry. Tom Brady doesn't drink coffee. I should probably reiterate that. Tom Brady never had a strawberry in his life. And, he's probably one of the most healthiest guys ever in football. So, Bleacher Report in January did note that Tom Brady is vegan for most of the year. He adds lean meats during the winter months. So, I'm not surprised that Tom Brady is a vegan, or if he does have a really strict diet. Colin Kaepernick, on the other hand, has the same type of lifestyle. Well, maybe he's a little more vegan than Tom Brady. And now, ever since teams are concerned about him having that type of diet, they don't want to sign him, which is really baffling to me. When you look at his stats, and I don't want to keep throwing you guys' stats I don't want to keep throwing his stats at you, but this is a player that had 18 touchdowns total, and that is passing and rushing. He did have 2 rushing touchdowns, 16 passing touchdowns, and only 4 picks. That's the most efficient year he's ever had. This was under Chip Kelly. But remember, we got to think about the team around him. He had guys like Quinn Patton throwing to. He threw to Vince McDonald. He didn't have anything. He didn't have anyone to throw to, okay? So, this just bothers me because it's just another excuse for teams to stay away from Colin Kaepernick. Why can't you just say that you don't want to sign him because of what his protest did? Or what he done with his protest? Well, just flat out say, I know all these GMs are just lying. And, I don't want to keep, ranting and all that. That's not what I'm here to do. I just wanted to point out the quarterbacks that have signed before Kaepernick. I got to start off with Mike Glennon from the Chicago Bears. He got a 3-year, $45 million deal. And I think he's getting like 16 guaranteed. No, he's getting 19 guaranteed. So he's going to make 16 this season. And he only has 8, I think he only has 18 starts. So he's going to start for the Chicago Bears. Got Brian Hoyer going to the 49ers. It looks like he is going to be the guy who replaces Kaepernick as a starter. He signed a 2-year, $12 million deal. He's going to play, and he signed before Kaepernick. Then you got Nick Foles. He went from being a 3-year starter in Philly to 1-year bust with the Rams. Remember, he got traded in that Sam Bradford deal. And now he's a backup in Kansas City. He is now going to back up for Carson Wentz and sign for 2 years and $11 million. So Nick Foles probably had the worst 2 years in the league. Probably worse than Colin Kaepernick had. And now Nick Foles is on a roster. Got Josh McCown going to the Jets. Josh McCown is about to be 38. He went to the Jets to be the starter, who don't have anything. They don't know what they're doing at the quarterback position right now. But he's going to the Jets on a 1-year, $6 million deal. And over his past 3 seasons, Josh McCown is 2-20. And he has a 59.1 completion percentage. So he signed ahead of Kaepernick. Now we go to Landry Jones, who's been a backup his entire career for the Steelers. He's going back to the Steelers to back up Ben Roethlisberger. I'm actually not surprised by this. So I kind of discounted him in this list a little bit, but he is someone that has signed before Colin Kaepernick. Then you got Matt Barkley, who's going to back up Brian Hoyer. He goes to the 49ers, I think, for 2 years and $4 million. Got Mark Sanchez going to Chicago. Mark Sanchez got a contract before Colin Kaepernick did. Let me repeat that. That's Mark Sanchez. This is a guy that signed with Denver last year. He thought he was going to be the starter. Lost the starting job to Trevor Siemian. Then went to the Cowboys to back up Dak Prescott. And then when he started, I think the last game, it was an absolutely worst outing I've ever seen from him in his career. So he's on the team. He goes to Chicago on 1-year, $2 million deal to be a backup. Then you got Geno Smith. He goes to the Giants to back up Eli Manning. Geno goes to the Giants for a $1.2 million deal. Then you got Josh Johnson, who is going to be the third-string quarterback for the Giants. He goes for 2 years and $1.015 million. Then you got E.J. Manuel going to the Raiders. He's going to back up, or at least compete for the backup position for the Raiders. He goes there for, $800,000. So he's going to compete for a backup job. Then you got Kellen Moore, who goes back to the Cowboys. Then you got Aaron Murray, who goes to the Rams. He's coming. I think he's coming from the Chiefs. The former Georgia Bulldog. Is going to possibly back up Jared Goff, or might start in case Jared Goff stunks again. So he is on the team. You got Chase Daniel, who's going back to New Orleans to be a backup. So you got all these quarterbacks who have signed before Kaepernick. And don't forget, Case Keenum also just signed a deal as well. Case Keenum. I just went to the Vikings to back up Sam Bradford. So you got 14 guys that have at least signed a backup or start at least a backup position or maybe a chance to start. And Colin Kaepernick is still in the market. I know Jay Cutler is still in the market. But the reason why I'm focusing more on Kaepernick is because, he became a national name in the fall. And, he has been very polarizing. And I still think he is better than most of the guys I mentioned previously. I think he's a better quarterback than Jay Cutler. I just think he is. I'd rather have Kaepernick than Jay Cutler. I think we might have to wait till the draft to see where Kaepernick's career goes. But the fact that Colin Kaepernick hasn't even gotten one call, still really absurd. And I have a problem with teams saying that they're concerned about his vegan diet. They're not. If anything, I'd rather have my player on a vegan diet than being out of shape. And I know that, when Kaepernick was playing at a high level, he was heavier. He was a lot more, he had more of a built physique. So maybe there is some concern about that, but I feel like that shouldn't be the priority. He looked like he can still play at a relatively, he can be really good with a really good team around him. I think I saw that from him last year. I think I'm ready to say, with this report of teams saying that they're concerned about his vegan diet, I think I'm officially ready to say that Colin Kaepernick is being blackballed. I think I'm ready to say it because I've never heard anything about a player's diet being concerned for teams. I've never heard this in my entire life. If anything, I've always heard about teams being concerned about players' diet that's not good. I've never heard teams being concerned of a player's diet that is a vegan diet, which is pretty healthy for you. So with this, I'm going to have to say Colin Kaepernick is being blackballed, and Tom Brady, who's one of the best quarterbacks of all time, he might be the best ever. He is a vegan for most of the year. And no one bats an eye at all. No one does. No one bats an eye. So, and I'm not trying to compare Colin Kaepernick and Tom Brady. I'm not doing that. But still, there has to be a little bit of a double standard here. There has to be. There has to be a double standard here, and this thing really bothered me. Because this is the most absurd thing I've ever heard. I never heard a player's diet being a concern when he's a free agent. And, I do think if Colin Kaepernick is not on a team, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised. I do think he's better than at least 10 or 12 of the quarterbacks, maybe even half. I just think, he may not never get another chance, but it's a shame because I feel like he has done finally everything right. He looks like he's finally grown up a little bit. He looks like he is more into he's a little more serious as a person. And 2 years ago, I think in 2015 is last year. It's Jim Tomsula, who was the coach. At a press conference, Colin Kaepernick literally had a hat. He had a hat on backwards, and he had like a jacket on with like a V-neck with a gold chain around his neck with Beats headphones. And he was talking after that 4 interception game against the Cardinals. And he just literally just didn't want to talk to the media. He looked like he wasn't the mature guy. So if that guy was on the free agent market, yeah, I can see teams not taking him. But when you saw a guy who was voted as best teammate, who looked like he finally had a really good head on his shoulders, he looks like he is on a really good diet to stay in shape. How is that guy still on the market? And we've seen the stats. He looks like he can play on a good team. 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. And I know he's been one of the highest sack quarterbacks, but come on now. He didn't have a whole line. Didn't have an O-line at all. So I got to say, I think Colin Kaepernick is officially being blackballed in the NFL. All right, well, I'm going to take my last break, and when I get back, I'm going to discuss the Miami Dolphins. They cut one of their former first-round picks, and I'm going to tell you who that is when I return to the Going to Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the Going to Media Concepts Football Podcast. And this past weekend, the Miami Dolphins have released former 3rd overall pick, Dion Jordan. They released the defensive end after he felt a physical. And honestly, I'm not too surprised that this has ended. Ever since, Dion Jordan has been in the league, he's only played 2 years. I believe he's had 26 games under his belt, but only have one start. He's only had 46 tackles and 3 sacks. Dion Jordan hasn't played in 2 years due to suspensions for violating the NFL's policy on substances of abuse. And he was drafted number 3 overall in the 2013 NFL draft. And when I look back at the NFL draft, there's really not a lot of players that came out of the top 10 that made an impact. So when I go from 1, you got Eric Fisher. Okay, he's been on the Chiefs. You got Luke Jokel. He's on the 2nd team. You got Dion Jordan. He just got cut. Lane Johnson, I believe he's still there. Or at least he's still in the league. Ezekiel Ansah, who's probably one of the best players of this draft. He's still in Detroit. Probably the best one that was a sure thing in this top 5. Barvicius Mingo, remember, he went to the Patriots. Jonathan Cooper, he got cut by the Cardinals. Or at least he got traded to the Patriots. You got Tavon Austin. Tavon Austin got drafted at number 8. Has not been anything more than just a kick returner. You got D. Milner, who has been a bust. And you got Chase Warmack, who's been very serviceable. So, this 2013 draft, the most productive players was Tyler Eifert, who was drafted at 21. You got Desmond Trufant, 22. You have DeAndre Hopkins, who was drafted 27. You got Alec Ogletree, who was drafted at the 30th. So there wasn't a whole lot of really great talent in this draft. He was under this draft, and there wasn't a whole lot of talent. Remember that Dolphins traded up to draft Dion Jordan, and he thought he was going to be their pass rusher to go next to Cameron Wake. he was making the transition to defensive end because, he was an outside linebacker in college. So he was an absolute physical freak, 6'6". He had the potential to be a really good edge rusher in the NFL, but he just couldn't get it done. He was very undersized. He looked like he was better used in space to be a cover linebacker, but Miami, they just didn't want to put him at linebacker. They wanted him to be a defensive end. And, ever since Dion Jordan tried to bulk up for the 2015 season, that's when the PED violations began. He was suspended for 6 games, and then, 2016, he was suspended for the whole year. So, I don't know if we'll ever see Dion Jordan back in the game. He's 27. He's been in the league. He's been out of the league for 2 years. It's hard for me to see a team take a chance on a guy who's been out of the league for 2 years, even though he is still 27. Because 2 years out of football is a lot. We keep talking about, Marshawn Lynch coming back, even though he's been out of 1 year. It's hard to come back by not playing football at all. And, I just don't think I see a team, trying to take a chance on Dion Jordan. I think, the writing's been on the wall for quite some time now. I really thought he would have had a chance to come back and perhaps start for the Dolphins this year. But, it just doesn't work out. And when I look at Dion Jordan, I just think he might have to be in the top 10 busts of all time in the NFL. I can't put him in the top 5, but top 10. When you're the 3rd overall pick and you don't produce, and you only have 3 career sacks, you're an absolute bust. Sure, I can see maybe a couple of teams taking a chance on him. He is from San Francisco. I can maybe see the 49ers try to have him at depth, but they're probably going to add Solomon Thomas in the draft. And remember, they have Eric Armstead, and you got DeForest Buckner there. So I don't know if they might have him as an outside linebacker. I think that would be pretty good for him. I can possibly see him going to the Jaguars, with all that young talent that they have. I think that could be a really good spot for Dion Jordan. I would like to see him in Chicago. I think he can be a good player in Cleveland. And I know it's Cleveland. All the jokes are there, but I do think that he can at least be someone that can be serviceable, at least be a role player. Because, Dion Jordan's just not a star. But when I look back at this 2013 draft that includes Dion Jordan at number 3 pick, there wasn't a whole lot of impact players. There's only 3 that really stick out to me. One of them is Ezekiel Ansah, who was drafted at the 5th. And you got Tyler Eifert, who's one of the best tight ends in the NFL when healthy. So he got drafted at 21. And you got DeAndre Hopkins, who has the potential to be a top 5 quarterback, top 5 receiver, if he happens to get a quarterback. But he has been in the top 10, top 15 range ever since. Those are only 3 guys that really stick out to me in the 2013. That has to be, honestly, this has to be one of the worst drafts in the past 5 years. This has to be one of the worst drafts the league has ever had. And that's not the team's fault, but, it is what it is. I just think this is one of the worst drafts that we had in a while. Well, in probably the past 10 years. There just wasn't a whole lot of talent, and unfortunately the Dolphins didn't get someone that wasn't talent. And do I see Dion Jordan back in the NFL? It's tough for me to say, but I do think he is young enough for teams to take a chance on him. But he just has to get reinstated in the NFL first. And, he did fail physical, so that may play a part too of him not finding a team. But all I got to say is that Dion Jordan, he might be, if he doesn't play ever again, he might be a top 10 bust of all time. Being a third overall pick and only mustering up 3 yards, that is pretty horrendous. That's pretty horrendous. But hopefully everything goes back on track and he can be at least a starter in this league. I still think, I think the Jags are a perfect team. I think the Niners are a pretty good team for him to go to. I can definitely see the Raiders pick him up, to add depth for that defense. I do think he'll get some interest if he does get reinstated to the league, but I don't know if he can ever be that star that the Dolphins thought he could be. All right, well, that's going to conclude it for me. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll discuss any type of news that happens over the next 24 hours. We don't know. Maybe Adrian Peterson can sign with the Patriots. Adrian Peterson, he is visiting the Patriots today, so maybe a deal can get done and we can talk about it tomorrow. But as of now, I'm going to leave for the day. I'll be back tomorrow. My name is Jeremiah. I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. You guys have a great day and come back tomorrow to talk more football.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.